Hi guys, I hope you're all doing great out there. And basically, I just want to invite you again to our conversation once again. Today, I'm coming with a very thought provoking topic about discipline. Some of the thoughts that came to play recently with regards to discipline, because it is believed that if you stay disciplined long enough, you will be able to eventually succeed. I mean, this is true. It is true. Discipline is a significant part of success, of course, because the lack of it is the absence of success as well. The elderly ones or the people with the most experience in life would also agree with this terminology that as long as you're disciplined, you will succeed. The areas of discipline that I wanted to talk to you about is the idea of discipline when it comes to relationships, when it comes to health, when it comes to careers. Discipline can keep you moving, but does it allow you space to think about the direction that you're going? As we practice discipline, do we allow ourselves to break for a bit and ask ourselves some questions just to assess whether we're taking the right direction, we're moving towards the right steps? This is quite critical. We know that discipline shapes or builds careers, businesses, routines and habits. So, especially habits, when you have a certain habit that you want to build on, of course, discipline is the one that keeps us going, even when the motivation is missing. So, it is a good thing. Today, I do not want to talk about the positive aspects of discipline because we all know and we can all agree that discipline is what shapes us, to be honest. However, I want to talk about the gray area that is not necessarily talked about or has not necessarily been discovered. I want to talk about the negative aspects of discipline. As I initially said, discipline builds habits, it builds careers, it builds businesses, and routine. My observation today comes from the cons of discipline. Now, the negative side of discipline. Number one, when discipline becomes automatic. This is so wrong. Discipline should not be something that is done without questioning, without reflecting, without asking yourself, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? So it is automatic such that you miss the end goal of your objective. Discipline can be really detrimental to relationships, to health, to careers as well. When it comes to careers, you do your job for such a long time in such an amount of discipline to the point that you lose the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. You become comfortable in your area. You become oblivious to what's happening in your surroundings. And you miss the mark of what the purpose of your career is. Keep asking yourself whether you feel a sense of purpose in what you're doing. I've had the opportunity to work for 20 years. I managed to change employers 3 times. I kept asking myself, at this point, do I feel a sense of purpose? Do I feel like I'm moving towards the right direction? And because of those types of questions, they allowed me to think about my next move. Unless your career is fulfilling and gives you a sense of purpose, do not stay in it so long that you lose your purpose in it. Relationships. When it comes to relationships, of course, discipline builds structure in our lives. We need discipline in everything that we do, yes. But we need to be a bit flexible, especially when it comes to relationships and friendships. So when I talk about relationship, I talk about all types of relationships, right? Friendship, courtships, and so on. And of course, these types of relationships need to be dealt with differently. These types of relationship needs flexibility, presence, and emotional awareness. So if you come with some sort of rigidity in these types of relationships, then it can cost you friends. A friend of yours wants to see you, and you'll probably come up with something like, today is not the day because this is not in my schedule. Today I'm doing something else because, I have to go to the gym right now, or my schedule is to. Yes, it's okay to have some sort of structure, but sometimes when it's done consistently, then it becomes, you become a rigid person, and you're not allowing yourself to be flexible and to accommodate things as they come. You're not spontaneous. So these are the things that are needed in relationships. and courtships. Spontaneity is important. So this is also an area where discipline can really cost you your friends. So in these forms of relationship, it's good to ask yourself, then this is where the self-reflection comes in. Give yourself space and think about questions like, do I feel that discipline is helping me build these connections, or does it create distance from these connections, from building these connections? Now, the other area is habits. Discipline can really lock us into certain behaviors and habits. You tend to become fully or highly concentrated in specific habits. Just because you started them doesn't mean that you have to continue them. In the beginning, you start a habit, but at some point you need to give yourself space again and think whether this habit that you're practicing still serves you and still adds any benefits into your life. Yeah, so sometimes when these habits or when these behaviors that we have created in our lives become too strict, then they tend to lose their purpose. They become more like obligations rather than support. So they start adding pressure into your life, right? If you don't get to do them or when you have to do them. They become like little rituals. You feel so guilty when you don't get to do them. And even when you don't get to do them, they start making you feel so anxious because a routine has changed. Instead of this habit that you have created to start helping you, it starts controlling you. And this is where I kind of have a problem with it. So without self-reflection, discipline can turn into routines that automatically become habits. But then this could be habits that no longer align with who we are becoming. And hence, the importance of self-reflection. And then number 2 is when discipline becomes a cost. So we've talked about how discipline can impact relationships, careers, and habits as well. But when discipline becomes a cost, especially when it comes to our health, this is something that might be irreversible. And the cost that I'm talking about here can come in terms of lost time, strained relationships, damaged health, or just living a life that no longer aligns with your purpose. And sometimes this cost is not necessarily immediately visible. You can actually come to realization years later when it's actually quite late, and some of the things like, for example, health might not be reversible. Yeah, having said all that, sometimes the power of discipline lies into giving yourself a pause. Taking a pause and asking yourself questions like, is this still meaningful to me? Am I growing towards the right direction? Am I pursuing something just because I started it or because it brings something into my life? And so I just want to remind you, friends, that, without direction, even the most disciplined journey may take you to a place that you do not intend to go. Therefore, it is always important to pause. And sometimes the pause is what keeps your life aligned. So friends, until next time, talk to you soon and take care of yourselves. Bye.